Good afternoon, members, and welcome to this meeting of full council. During the meeting today, I will be making rulings on process and conduct during the meeting and would ask council to abide by the standing orders and rules of debate. At certain times, I may seek guidance from my advisors should we need to adjourn. I will inform council of what is happening and the time for us to reconvene. We all enjoy robust, respectful debate. If members' speeches run over the time allocated, I will allow you to finish your sentence, but ask you to finish as quickly as possible. I would also like to take this opportunity to remind members that there is no local government equivalent of parliamentary privilege. Members will therefore be liable for any defamatory statements they make. If you wish to speak during the meeting, I would ask that you raise your hand and wait for me to invite you to speak. Please raise any points of order verbally. I will then pause the meeting to deal with the point of order. When raising a point of order, please state which procedure, rule or law you believe has been breached. All votes will be conducted via the electronic voting system today. If we receive any amendments to the recommendations before council today, I will adjourn to ensure that all members have adequate time to read the amendment. Thank you. I move to item 1, apologies. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. We've apologies from Councillors Ney, Briers Delve and Councillor Bill Stevens. Councillor Larry and Councillor Rebecca Smith have advised us that they will be late.
Can I ask if there are any further apologies? No? Right.
Sorry, Lord Mayor. Just to say, Councillor Darcy should be attending at some point.
Right.
He's in court at the moment.
So he'll be arriving late. Right. Thank you. I move to the minutes of the last meeting. I propose that we approve and sign the minutes of the meetings held on the 27th of January 2025 as a correct record. Deputy Lord Mayor, will you second my proposal?
I will second your proposal, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Does anyone wish to speak on this item?
We won't take a vote. Do you want to take an electronic vote or do you want to say show of hands?
Well, I think we can see a show of hands if everybody's... yes, so if we all agree, could you see by show of hands, please? Thank you very much. I move to item 3 on the agenda, declaration of interests. I would like to remind the councillors that a general dispensation is in place regarding council tax interest for item 5. Therefore, councillors are not required to make individual declarations of interest solely on the grounds that they are council tax payers. Can members please make it known by raising their hands, please, if they have any other private or disclosable pecuniary interests in any of the matters on today's agenda? My advisor will take a record of the interests declared. Thank you, members. Are there any further interests to declare? No. Councillors, at this point, I would like to move a procedural motion to suspend Appendix 1, bracket Rules of Debate 5, 1 of the Constitution to remove the limit on lengths of speeches of the leader and leader of the largest opposition group in relation to item 5, proposed revenue and capital budget 2025-26. Deputy Lord Mayor, will you second my proposal?
I second your proposal, Lord Mayor.
We'll move to the vote now, and please vote using the buttons on your unit. Green for favour, red against, and amber to abstain. I declare that passed. Thank you. I move to item 4, urgent announcements. And at this point, I would like to take a moment to reflect on an anniversary none of us could have imagined making. On the 24th of February, 3 years ago, the full-scale Russian invasion of Ukraine began. 3 years later, we are still watching this deadly and appalling conflict play out on our screens night after night. With the world leaders currently embroiled in a war of words, it is important to reflect on the war on the ground and the unimaginable suffering the population of Ukraine has endured. I am proud that our city has been able to do its bit for those who have been forced to flee their homeland and seek sanctuary here. We are proud of our quick response to the Homes for Ukraine scheme, which was launched in March 2022, and that we are able to welcome over 200 Ukrainians that year. We have since welcomed over 70 more guests to Plymouth. Many of our residents opened up their homes to host those fleeing from Ukraine, and we continue to see new sponsors registering to offer their support. Organisations across the city continue to offer support and a warm welcome to make sure they can access vital services such as healthcare, education, social care, and English language lessons. To the Ukrainians here in Plymouth who will be thinking of their family and friends back home, we stand with you. Thank you. We move on to item 5, proposed revenue and capital budget 2025 to 26. Before we begin the debate, I would like to inform members that should amendments be moved, I will ask Council if an adjournment is required to understand the implications. All members will have the opportunity to speak on the motion and any amendments to it. But could I remind members that speeches must refer to the content of the motions on the floor at the time. Leader, would you like to introduce the report?
Thank you very much indeed, Lord Mayor, and obviously we hope to see Councillor Lowry in this place very soon. He's currently using the services of a dentist, and we hope he'll be with us, if not to speak, but to wave. But he may speak. Who knows how well that surgery will go. So, could I also cheekily congratulate Councillor Bryers-Delve and Mrs. Bryers-Delve for the birth of their new daughter, Cleo, which is why Councillor Bryers-Delve is not with us today, but we are all delighted that everything went well. Mum and baby have been doing very well indeed. And Big Sister. Yes, indeed. Big Sister's very excited. Lord Mayor, I imagine those in the Liverpool FC boardroom were looking at Plymouth in a new light after what happened at Home Park in the FA Cup. They clearly didn't expect a team that had been scraping along the bottom of the Championship all season to knock them out. It was an embarrassing reminder that you should never underestimate an underdog, because often they will be more dogged, determined, and ambitious than those that you view as your peers. You might say the same could be said for Plymouth itself. As the 15th largest city in England, with a population of almost 270,000, we are not in the Premier League size-wise. And it is fair to say that our geographical position in the far southwest means that we have been overlooked in years gone by, not least by those who have held the purse strings in Whitehall. But those who know us understand that far from being an underdog, we are a city that is capable of punching well above our weight. As a council, I think we've been doing that ever since we became a unitary authority in 1998. Since being back in control of our own destiny, we have grown in confidence, and our ambition for the city has been growing ever since. And that ambition for Plymouth has been reflected in every budget we have presented to the council. We have remained hugely ambitious for Plymouth and its residents through thick and thin. And there has been a lot of thin, not least with 14 years of austerity. We have agreed budgets that deliver economic growth, build skills, create more housing, improve transport connectivity, protect the vulnerable in our city, put Plymouth on the map for arts and culture, and most importantly, create more opportunities for our residents. We have delivered time and again and again and again. And without that ambition, Plymouth would look very different. We wouldn't have the Box, for example, now one of the best arts and cultural facilities of anywhere in the UK. An amazing asset for Plymouth that will soon welcome its 1 millionth visitor. It exists because there was ambition, a big ambition, one that was also shared by Ian Bowyer when he was leader of the council. We wouldn't have had a transport network to support a growing city, no Forder Valley Link Road, or the extra capacity created by the Derryford Transport Scheme, or numerous other transport infrastructure projects. We wouldn't have the Plymouth Life Centre, without doubt the best sports facility in the region, if not in the country, which was delivered because of the shared ambition with the then leader, Vivian Pengelly. The university's regeneration of the former Intercity House is unlikely to have happened, or the barcode and the new bus station. We wouldn't have the park, our new crematorium, which we opened last year, which has created the standard of facilities those suffering bereavements in our city deserve. And we wouldn't have had the regeneration in the city centre, from the Piazza to the Civic Square to Old Town Street and New George Street to Armada Way. We wouldn't have had the business parks to keep on driving growth, or Ocean's Gate, which so successfully nurtures innovation by marine engineering firms. We wouldn't have the economic growth that means Plymouth economy is worth £6.9 billion and supports 116,000 jobs, not just for Plymouth, but for the sub-region. So I make no apology for being ambitious for Plymouth. It's what leaders of the council have always done. Or, and I won't apologise for this, the fact that we are again recommending a budget that is hugely ambitious for Plymouth and for Plymouth residents, because it needs to be. Like many cities and regions right now, we are exploring the opportunities that will come through local government reorganisation and devolution. It is now more important than ever that there is recognition of the critical role that Plymouth, as the biggest city and the economic powerhouse of the Southwest Peninsula, plays in the region. I'll tell you just how much Plymouth matters. Our economy supports over £2 billion gross value added for the travel to work area. To put this in perspective, Plymouth's economy is 50% the size of Cornwall's economy and 32% the size of Devon's economy. We are big and we are clever. We have currently an investment pipeline of £5.5 billion, and our economic strategy aims to deliver 8,000 new jobs and 1,000 businesses. This scale of delivery is because this council has prioritised growth, not just in this budget, but for the last 15 years, delivering transformative projects again and again and again. Now, while some may have been surprised that Plymouth came top of the PricewaterhouseCoopers UK Growth for Cities Index in 2024, we weren't. We call ourselves Britain's Ocean City for a reason. It's not just because Plymouth's rich seafaring history. The ocean is still what helps make our economy tick. Our marine economy in Plymouth is huge. We have the greatest marine employment of any town or city in the UK at 20,110 jobs. That's 19% of all employment. And we have a growing marine innovation sector that is leading the way in areas such as autonomous vessels. There's our world-class expertise in marine sciences. There's our 4 harbours, which we are supporting with the city's first ever port strategy, which we're bringing to the council, to the cabinet shortly. Through the Plymouth and South Devon Freeport, we're helping to deliver dredging the Catwater, to secure and expand the port capacity and to support greener vessels. And we've helped boost the capabilities at Mill Bay, where we've helped deliver the strengthening of the quay and new passenger bridge. And while there may be fewer large grey ships entering and leaving Plymouth than there once were, the dockyard and the naval base at Devonport are as important to the UK's strategic defence capability as it ever was. Devonport is the only place in the UK that can support the deep maintenance of the new generation of submarines that will deliver the continuous at-sea deterrent. Babcock's Devonport facility now needs to attract an estimated 5,500 employees over the next 10 years just to sustain its core defence workforce, and a further 2,000 construction workers to sustain delivery of the infrastructure contracts at that busy site. Like many other areas, we already have a major shortage of housing. So we have a huge challenge ahead in ensuring Devonport has the skills and the housing infrastructure in place. We've teamed up with dockyard operators Babcock, the Ministry of Defence, and a whole range of partners to make this happen, and quickly. We have ambitions to build over 10,000 homes in and around the city centre to support this growth. And we will be supported by Homes England, who have made Plymouth a priority area for housing investment. We are on the cusp of the greatest and sustained period of investment in 2 generations. We know we have a moment in time to grasp this unique opportunity and to transform the wealth and living standards of the city. It's got to be a team effort, but that's one thing that we're really good at. One thing that strikes many people when they come to Plymouth is how strong our partnerships are. Take health, for example. Construction work is underway on a much-needed community diagnostic centre in the centre of Plymouth, thanks to a team effort between the council and the NHS. And a much-needed new NHS dental practice to provide urgent care for people who can't get an NHS dentist is going to happen in a city centre premise owned by the council, thanks to a partnership with the University of Plymouth Peninsula Dental School. There's a new eye infirmary in the city that we made happen by working with the NHS to provide a site. It's the same with sports and community facilities. We already have the Plymouth Life Centre, and it's where we've recently invested in new state-of-the-art gym facilities. Believe it or not, I've tried them. I know. But we are ambitious. And we want to do more and ensure even more Plymouth residents benefit from the best facilities. That's why we've also teamed up with Plymouth Argyle and other partners to create a new £21 million sports and community hub at the Brickfields in Devonport, now called Fulston Park. It will feature a new sports hub run by our friends at Plymouth Argyle Community Trust, with new pitches, new athletics facilities, better public access, play zones. It will also become home to the Argyle women's team. This has been the biggest single sport and health investment Plymouth has seen since the opening of the Life Centre. It's a game changer for the health and well-being of residents in one of the city's less affluent areas. It wasn't an easy deal to pull together, but we made it happen. Now, I've already mentioned the regeneration of Plymouth City Centre. For many years, our city centre was maligned, a bit tired and a bit drab, some people said. Some people said too many trees, but we won't go into that now. Well, you wouldn't call the new look Old Town Street and New George Street tired or drab, or the refurbished Civic Square, or the post-war buildings that after they're spruced up are getting a new generation of fans. And of course, a big piece of the jigsaw is, of course, Armada Way. Now, within weeks of regaining control of Plymouth City Council, we scrapped the previous scheme and agreed to consent properly on a new, bolder and better one, a more ambitious one, because that's what the city centre needs and because Plymouth business and residents deserve the best. And I'm thrilled that that work is progressing quickly on what is a genuinely exciting scheme that will transform the tired 80s landscape into a space that will attract people with green spaces, event spaces, and fantastic play areas. And not forgetting that it will have around 169 new trees and a sustainable underground drainage system that will reduce pollution running into Plymouth Sound. I, for one, can't wait to see children playing in those new play spaces. The greenery blooming, activities taking place in event spaces, and people enjoying the new water feature. Of course, there's more to do in regenerating our city centre. We want more people to live, work, shop, and enjoy themselves there. There's the plans for more regeneration in the West End at Colin Campbell Court. There's our plans to create a new college campus focusing on blue and green skills in the former Civic Centre. This new campus could see up to 60 courses being delivered, focusing on the city's marine sector as well as the environment. We're talking building skills in construction, engineering, energy and science, building skills and expertise in areas such as offshore wind, electric vehicle technology, battery storage, net zero and sustainable technology. I mentioned the 14 years of austerity earlier. Than this lasting damage has left so much of a problem to us. It can't be underestimated, and repairing the damage won't be quick or easy. The housing and homelessness crisis is a symptom of that, and it's one of the most terrible legacies of the previous Tory government. It means that in Plymouth, we've been left with more than 7,000 households who continue to wait for a decent home that they can rent at an affordable price. We are left in a position where there are currently more than 300 households in Plymouth who have no permanent accommodation and as a result must live in temporary accommodation or in bed and breakfast. It's not good enough, and that's why we're working hard to tackle the problem. There's our £11.5 million investment in our award-winning Plan for Homes to help accelerate the building of new, sustainable and affordable homes in the city. And we've already earmarked more than 40 sites suitable for these new homes, which we hope to number more than 5,000 over the next few years. We're also putting in £10 million to provide better temporary accommodation for families who find themselves homeless. Now, the entire social care sector across the country has been left in a state of constant crisis by successive Tory governments. Rising demand, rising costs, and rising complexity of people's needs, combined with year after year of government underfunding, has left a broken system. And fixing it won't be easy. It won't be quick. But there's a once-in-a-lifetime chance to get this right. So I'm heartened that the government has announced a complete review led by Dame Louise Casey, who has a track record of delivery. There is nothing we do that is more important than protecting vulnerable adults and children. And this is reflected in this administration's commitment to ensuring Plymouth should be a place where people can grow up and grow old and do so prosperously, safely, and with dignity. And it is also reflected in the fact that around 83% of our revenue budget is spent on social care services. We are pulling out all the stops to ensure that the most vulnerable residents in Plymouth get the support that they need. So this budget allocates a further £12 million for adult social care. The capital programme, which also supports the delivery of a new purpose-built £13 million care facility for adults with learning disabilities and complex needs, is due to open next summer. This budget also allocates an additional £16 million to meet the pressures in children's social care and a further £3 million for SEND. As corporate parents, everybody in the room will know we support around 520 looked after children, a responsibility we take very seriously. Some children need significant level of support. And like all councils, we've been at the mercy of private sector providers whose costs can be exorbitant. And that is why our capital programme is investing £2 million in 2 new children's residential care facilities for the city, reducing their reliance on private care providers. We are also increasing the financial support to encourage more people to become foster carers, to ensure that our most vulnerable children can grow up locally in loving and safe environments. A big priority is to provide early support to prevent families needing emergency support, and I'm pleased that we will continue to expand the network of children and family hubs so that families can receive early support close to where they live. We are also investing in facilities for young people, with major refurbishments of 3 of our youth centres finishing very soon. Health is an issue that people tell us again and again is a priority. The £17 million for public health in our budget will enable our public health team to continue protecting and improving the health of local people. This will be used to deliver a range of services, including public health nursing services, sexual health services, NHS health checks, substance misuse services, and a range of other health improvement initiatives. Yet again, our Thrive Plymouth programme will deliver programmes with our partners to tackle health inequalities across the city. In Plymouth, we are blessed with some amazing green and blue spaces. When I take people who are visiting Plymouth for the first time up to the Hoe to look out over Plymouth Sound, their breath is often taken away. Few cities can boast such a spectacular view and such easy access to the ocean. And it's probably fair to say, in the past, Plymouth hasn't always made the best use of those assets. Now that's all changed, not only through initiatives such as the creation of the boulevard, leading from the city centre down to the waterfront at Mill Bay, but also the establishment of the Plymouth Sound National Marine Park, which, as you know, is the first national marine park in the UK. It has been incredible to see its work engaging thousands of people, and the projects and events to attract more people to get in, on and under and around the water, and an array of activities to engage residents in appreciating and protecting the marine life that we have just under the surface. And it is another success story in Plymouth's ambition, helping attract investment in the city. The Marine Park was awarded £11.6 million by the National Heritage Lottery Fund towards its trailblazing £22 million programme. And I was delighted recently to go down to Tyneside to see how the work is progressing on one of the first elements of the Horizons project, which is a £4.5 million regeneration at Tyneside Lido. This is creating a multi-purpose youth, community and event space in a previously unused space in the main building, as well as a base where youth workers, rangers and volunteers can introduce young people to opportunities created in the park. The top terrace is now being renovated into a new seating area and event space with a coffee pod overlooking the Sound. It's not one of those little pods, by the way, that would be very expensive. But this year we'll see work start on major improvements at Mountbatten, as well as over the water at Mount Edgecombe, where the Napoleonic era battery is being restored and opened to the public. And all of that, Lord Mayor, is barely touching the surface. There is so much more. On land, we are investing in our green spaces. For example, the capital programme includes work at Trefusis Park to reduce the risk of flooding in Lipson Vale. And as well, I am promised this, the completion of the work at Central Park. There's how we're making Plymouth an even greener city by planting thousands of trees as part of the Plymouth and South Devon Community Forest. There's the work now underway on a new nature-friendly building at Poole Farm, where they do some amazing work. We saw it last week, didn't we? Connecting our communities to nature. It's called the Paddock Cabin, and it's made entirely of wood and will act as a space for youth clubs, nature-based education and ecotherapy sessions. Incredibly valued by those that use it, I am sure. All of these projects, Lord Mayor, are helping Plymouth to achieve net zero status. Our capital programme includes a total of 65 million for projects that will help towards achieving that goal. They include an innovative new heat network, which has the potential to completely revolutionise how we heat buildings across swathes of the city. We're also ensuring that the city's social housing stock is retrofitted with the insulation and modern heating needed to make them as energy efficient as possible. And we're investing in EV infrastructure, making it easier for people to make the switch from petrol to cleaner power. And we know that transport matters a great deal to our residents. They want reliable, affordable bus services. So I'm pleased that in this year's budget, there's 1.5 million for improving the bus network. There's investment in sustainable transport. I'm delighted that we're bringing 50 new electric buses to Plymouth, and there's more. There's over 200 bus shelters with solar panels. The Summer Royal Parade even featuring living roofs that attract pollinators. And I know people might say, that's all very well, why don't you just fix the potholes? I'm sure. Well, we do that. I mean, it's fair to say we do fix potholes. I mean, last year, our team fixed 8,000 of them. And in our budget next year, we're spending £4.5 million on highways work. So, Lord Mayor, I hope that I've been able to give you a good flavour of what this budget is all about and why it's important for Plymouth. I imagine some people might say when hearing this, but I thought you said you didn't have enough money, because I'm always saying that. Well, we don't. I mentioned the additional funding that we're having to put into social care just to keep up with demand for caring for the elderly, protecting vulnerable children and supporting homeless families. We're having to work hard to transform how we do things, and there's some really tough savings targets that each service needs to deliver. But it makes it even more important that we remain ambitious for Plymouth. Our future prosperity depends on it. Remaining ambitious will allow us to continue to attract investment in Plymouth and ensure Plymouth gets its fair share. Being ambitious also means doggedly protecting and, where possible, enhancing the 300 services that we provide. And I know that none of us in here takes any pleasure from recommending an increase in council tax. And we wouldn't do it if the alternative wasn't reducing critical services that we know residents need and value. So this budget does not include any reductions to libraries. It means we can cut the grass, clean the streets, empty the bins, maintain our roads and pavements. It means we can protect the most vulnerable adults and children in our city. And before I recommend this budget to you, I would just like to say a big thank you to our finance team. I can't thank David Northey because he's had to step out to go to an important meeting with the government, but I want to thank him in particular for his incredible forbearance and his, once again, delayed retirement. We are forever grateful to David for his public service and his dedication. But I also, and he would want me to thank his team, who have worked so hard to make this budget possible. It's complex, it's difficult, it's challenging, it's constantly changing, and they've been up to the mark all the do long day, I have to say. They pull it together, I don't know how. So together as a team, and Councillor Lowry is still not here. I'm sure he's on his way. And if he was, I would thank him too. And I would thank members of the scrutiny panels for the way in which they diligently looked at this budget before bringing it today. It was an incredible piece of work over 2 days. But you know, members, officers, partners, and the public together, we are achieving some incredible stuff in Plymouth, you know. It's time to recognise that we're in a really good period in Plymouth in terms of getting stuff done. And to the naysayers, I would say, you know, please don't do us down. We're a remarkable city doing remarkable things in very challenging circumstances. And there are people all over the country would give their right arm for what we are delivering here in Plymouth. I know that from my work with the Local Government Association. I'm sure when you meet colleagues from outside of Plymouth, they're very envious of what we're doing. So today, Lord Mayor, it's my job to commend the recommendations to you as set out in the report, which includes approving the proposed net revenue budget requirement for 25-26 of 253.4 million. That's not the total amount we're spending far more than that, but that is the net budget requirement, which is the basis upon which we set the council tax. So I'd like you to approve the council tax levels for 25-26. Can you please note the capital budget, which extends from here to 28-29 of £395.8 million. And we also would like you to approve the Tamer Bridge and Tor Point Ferry Joint Committee 25-26 revenue budget and capital programme, and the 25-26 draft business plan as set out in Appendix 15 of the report. We took this report to the Cabinet the other day, and one of the things that we reluctantly had to do was to go against the recommendation of the scrutiny panel, which was to increase the amount of money in balances, which I know that the scrutiny committee asked us to do. But you'll understand that with the advent of this democratically elected mayor referendum, which will be held sometime within the next 6 months, can't tell you when because we don't know yet, and it's not the council, it's not councillors' decision, this. But we have to find £410,000 to run a full-scale referendum into this vanity project. That's money that could have been spent on services. It's money that could have been spent putting right the balances of this council so that we were on a more stable platform. But we can't, because somebody out there who gave money to Johnny Mercer, £10,000 before the general election, knows better. So we've got to spend £410,000 on that. I'm not happy about it, but there you go. Anyway, all those in favour you can show in a minute, but Lord Mayor, I thank you. I move.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Councillor Allen, I understand it's your seconding report. Would you like to speak now or reserve your right?
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I'll speak now.
Thank you.
So, my Lord Mayor, councillors, starting at the main point I need to make today, this is a balanced budget that we're considering. We've done this ourselves without needing government permission to raise council tax above their own parameters or to borrow money to deliver services, unlike the 30 local authorities announced last week who need support to continue. We are drawing down almost £5 million from reserves, but these are to cover clear one-off pressures, including the aforementioned £410,000 for the directly elected mayor referendum. This reflects what is promised will be the last one-year settlement, so thank you to the government for listening to us as a sector. It sets out clearly the impact of the additional funding and resources and the actions required to mitigate continuing rising demand pressures in all of the areas we've been dealing with in recent years. We're not alone in facing these challenges. The response from our public engagement on the budget reflects our commitment to pothole repair, building more homes for local people, and keeping the city looking tidy and inviting. We're doing all of these things. However, like all councils, we're continuing to see big increases in our costs and rising demand for homelessness, social care for the elderly and vulnerable adults, social care for children, and home-to-school transport for children with special educational needs and disabilities. So how have we responded? Is this budget about reducing services to the people of Plymouth? Is this budget about cuts? The answer to both questions is no. It's not. Is it about closing libraries and cutting bus services? No. In fact, we're supporting additional bus routes, such as to the park. We haven't closed any libraries. In fact, we're working to make them more accessible to the public. This budget is about an additional £12 million for adult social care, an additional £16 million for children's social care, an additional £2 million for SEND transport, an additional £724,000 for homelessness support. And this is a budget about an additional £250,000 to support our funding for the net zero commitment, an additional £770,000 for increased resource in our SEND 0 to 25 team to reduce the waiting list for education, health and care plans. An additional £425,000 to increase staff resource within street services, which will improve grass cutting and waste collection. We have also maintained the commitment made last year by continuing the £300,000 budget uplift specifically for grass cutting. We're demonstrating our support for our leisure provider with an additional £141,000 to Plymouth Active Leisure, and we're recognising our foster carers with an increased allowance and setting aside £226,000. I'd like to give thanks to the Budget Scrutiny Board for 2 days of vigorous probing and challenging and the resultant recommendations. We do listen. You recommended we put aside funds to ensure we celebrate the 80th anniversary of VE and VJ days, so we have made £10,000 available. When calculating the income from council tax, we include assumptions for the financial impact from the cost of living crisis and the continuing requirements of citizens for support to pay their council tax through the Council Tax Support Scheme. We've not made any changes to our scheme, and it's worth noting that just under 20% of households in Plymouth are now in receipt of this support, with the income set aside in the 2025 to 26 budget of some £22.145 million. More homes mean more income, but what are we doing to grow the base? Well, we're releasing and maximising the opportunities of Plymouth City Council-owned sites to accelerate housing delivery, in particular for council-led delivery. We're working on a tripartite partnership between the Ministry for Homes, Communities and Local Government, Homes England and Plymouth, South Hams and West Devon councils, with a focus on city centre and brownfield housing opportunities. And we have updated our plan for homes. So I'll repeat, this is a balanced budget with gross resources of over £650 million. How are we doing this? Through shrewd financial management and ensuring we get the best value for every pound we receive in grant funding and every pound we raise and then spend wisely. This is a safe budget.
Excuse me, Councillor Allen,
Sir?
your time is up.
Oh, beg your pardon, my Lord Mayor. So, yeah, just to finish, it is a safe budget. It's been recommended by the Section 151 officer, David Northey, who again, I would also like to thank for his hard work. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. Councillor Lugger, do you wish to speak now?
Yes, my Lord Mayor, if I may, thank you. Thank you, my Lord Mayor. My opening gambit this time last year was a vote of thanks to the Section 151 officer and his team for all the hard work he did with DLUC regarding the EFS, which hampered the budget process in 2024. If you please, my Lord Mayor, I may begin by referring members to point 1 of the recommendations on page 2 of your report. The Capitalisation Directive was granted in principle by the Minister on the 27th of February 2024, subject to 2 conditions, namely an external assurance review and a detailed independent investigation into the 2019 pension transaction. There is no capitalisation directive as yet. We cannot close the 2019-2020 accounts. So I should be grateful, my Lord Mayor, if Councillor Evans would give us an update on this when he sums up. As I understand, the external assurance review has taken place, and indeed I was asked to speak at it, but the latter investigation has not been conducted. The national economy, of course, has a massive impact on local government financial activity. Rachel from Accounts has increased business taxes, and this is taking its toll on the UK economy as companies are cutting back on staff. They simply are not hiring. This country has static economic growth. Private sector employment in December fell at the fastest pace since January 2021, and notwithstanding what is said at paragraph 2.6 on page 14 of the report, NI relief, I know it's there, but it's insufficient, and there is no guarantee that this NI relief will be carried over next year. It was, of course, a knee-jerk reaction to a public outcry. All local authorities are suffering because of the wage bill, because of the Chancellor's austerity bill. People do not have enough money. The problem is compounded because the sparse money that they do have is being spent on interest on mortgages and rent that's been driven up by high interest rates. Inflation, of course, is going through the roof, and now there's a council tax increase. Who knows what the Chancellor is going to do in the new spring budget? Let us hope it's going to get a grip on the Bank of England, stimulate growth in this country, and possibly do something about cutting borrowing costs. Members will note from the papers before you today that the cost and demand pressure to provide adult social care, children's services, homelessness support, home-to-school transport, and SEND. Where resources are drained, clearly this impacts on other council services, such as filling potholes, as we've been told, street cleaning, and of course weeding. The funding gap is an issue that remains complex and politically intractable. However, I do see a budget today which, as Councillor Allen has said, is balanced, and it's balanced under difficult circumstances. Mainly probably, and he's not here at this point in time, Councillor Larry's stewardship over this. Careful consideration, I note, has been applied across all council activity when setting the budget before council today. I believe we have a healthy capital programme before us, which will deliver good financial returns for the city. As I mentioned this time last year, I praised the vision of David Draffin and his team, and this year there are many more exciting projects in the pipeline. Turning from one David to another, this time David Haley, who has done sterling work transforming his department. I am honoured to serve, Lord Mayor, on the Plymouth Children's Improvement Board. And I note the large sum of money, additional money, that has gone into children's services and education. The resources, of course, will be aimed at early prevention and front door. And it is gratifying to see that we are building a children's home in this city, which will save these poor mites being transported to other places. That was nothing short than Victorian deportation. I now turn to page 10 of the report. Last year, I expressed grave concerns about the level of reserves. The auditors said that the £8 million was insufficient to maintain financial sustainability. You have listened. It has gone up to 12 million, for which I am grateful. So thanks to another David, the third David, this time David Northey. Perhaps this speech should be entitled The Parable of the Three Davids. Now, the external auditor's report this year confirms that the council has an organisational approach to financial planning. Again, possibly contributed to Councillor Larry's stewardship on that. But the report does identify a weakness in the arrangement of financial sustainability for the medium-term financial gap of £69 million, which is in the medium-term financial strategy 2023-2024 to 27-28. Could I invite the leader or Councillor Larry, when he comes in, to comment on whether this gap has widened? And can members here today and the people of Plymouth take assurance that this budget is robust enough going forward, having regard to the city's borrowing requirement, which I understand is creeping up to £1 billion, which appears to be spiralling out of control? Finally, I should comment on future budgetary threats. We need to be attuned to the changes that are taking place with the Care Act and welfare reforms generally across the board. I know the budget has monies written into it to address this, but it could spiral out of control. There are concerns that we on the Conservative group have, that if the capitalisation statement is not granted, we will have to set another budget. Will this bankrupt the council? Let's hope that this is an academic threat. And what I find most disconcerting, my Lord Mayor, and the leaders already alluded to it, is this unnecessary additional cost, detailed in paragraph 2 on page 2 of your paper. This absurd suggestion of a directly elected mayor. Members, the 400,000 plus that the leader has just alluded to is just the tip of the iceberg. They will have a department if this goes through. It will cost money. There will be an entourage. This is the thin end of the wedge. Must just correct the leader on one point, though. The author of that vanity group did give money to the Labour Party as well, I understand, not just Mr. Mercer. But anyway, there are Conservative members would now like to ask some questions, but that concludes my speech. Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Elgar. Right, does anyone else wish to speak? I have two names here. The first one is Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Good afternoon, members. The council budget meeting is the most important meeting of the council's municipal year. And I have to say, Lord Mayor, I'm sure I speak on behalf of all members of the council that the aspirations that Councillor Evans set out are generally the reason why all of us are in politics, to see the betterment of Plymouth. And I don't think there'll be any divide between our aspirations as a city and as individual members. But I would suggest, Lord Mayor, that it's one of the most underwhelming contributions that I've ever heard Councillor Evans bring to the council chamber. Because it's a speech without the detail that he normally would have a go at the Conservative government previously, and any government that fails to deliver a decent local government settlement to Plymouth. He would normally in detail be criticising parliamentarians for their bad decision making on behalf of Plymouth. But he has not used this opportunity really to give any reassurance in relation to the capitalisation direction, and the fact that this local authority should be ashamed of itself because we're asking for exceptional financial support, unlike the majority of other local authorities in this country. And that all we have, as Councillor Lugger indicated, and as reported in the papers, a letter of assurance, and that came from the last Conservative government. So we have a massive Labour majority in Parliament, we have a massive Labour majority in this council chamber. The most significant issue affecting this city is that we've got unapproved accounts over the last few years since the 2019 pension decision made by the then Labour councillor, Councillor Lowry, with Councillor Tudor Evans as the leader, still outstanding. This is a political matter, and we should be expecting our Labour politicians to put this right. But the Labour leader of the council didn't address it in his speech and shrugs it off as something that he can be trusted to resolve. Well, we don't believe. We shouldn't work on trust. We should work on reality. Why isn't it? Why isn't it that since the Labour government was elected in July of last year, that this Labour council hasn't resolved the fundamental issue that's hanging over this council is our statements of accounts and our budget setting and financial stewardship. It's disgraceful, Lord Mayor, that Councillor Evans, who's been the longest serving member of this council, has served as the Labour leader of this council since 1998, 99, leader of the Labour group and leader of the council on numerous occasions. Still, this is not being resolved. It's not good enough, and I would expect through you, Lord Mayor, for the leader of the council to tell us when it's going to be resolved and when Labour politicians are going to be speaking to their colleagues in government. We have a government minister representing this city, and still it's not being resolved. It's not good enough, and it's shameful. Now let's look at some of the detail of the budget. The reason why Plymouth is being paid more money by the government is because of the national insurance increase, which itself is left Plymouth picking up £250,000 of impact by the public. If this is something that's wonderfully important to the government, why haven't they fully funded this council on the impact? So in the report, we're told that we're getting £2,063,000 in government grant, yet the impact is £2.3 million. Why should the public pick up the additional costs of Labour's decision-making process? And we talk about the impacts of national insurance, but the impacts of inflation, and obviously the impacts of the increase in living wage. But when it comes to adult social care, what Councillor Allen didn't say when she said there are no cuts, there's savings plans. This budget has savings plans of just under £10 million. Let's be honest with the public. You know, people are fed up with politicians and smoke screens and not telling the absolute truth. £10 million almost of savings. Savings in reality are cuts. So let's be honest, this is not a wonderful budget. It's a budget that's going to have difficulties for the public. And what is interesting with the capital programme, meeting much of our aspiration, and it actually came to the fore for me when we had audit and governance. Actually, the majority of the capital programme, so 61% when you take into account capital receipts, is actually funded by council resources. Externally, the minority of finance comes from grant. So, you know, the public are doing their very best through council tax and through assets owned by the city to actually fund the capital programme. So I hope very much, Lord Mayor,
Councillor Nicholson,
just to sum up,
time is up.
and it's a pity there isn't fair treatment across the council chamber on this, but just to sum up, if I may, I would hope the leader will address the capitalisation direction and tell us when it's going to be resolved. Tell us when he's actually going to get a decent settlement for Plymouth from his Labour government. And also I'd like to know, in relation to the local plan, how much, Lord Mayor, is in the budget to review our local plan, given the fact that the Labour Party have torn up our 5-year housing land supply in their figures in December of last year. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Beer.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, for allowing me to speak on this budget this afternoon. This afternoon, I will vote with my conscience and not what I'm told to do by a political group. There are many concerns to highlight in this report that we have before us today. Of course, most of this mess is an overhang from the previous inexperienced Conservative administration that brought our city to its knees. But didn't I warn you of that, Councillor Evans? Children's Services is in a dire state, with children in our care exceeding the Council's predictions. The pressures are tremendous, and I note that we are turning to opening some children's homes, although on a small scale, in smaller family-type settings. The cost of providing such care to children is immense. My plea would be to encourage people to come forward to foster children and give them the best possible chance of life. I would like to take the opportunity to thank our current band of in-house foster carers for their dedication to the city's children in care. Why are we still facing profits before children with companies who provide child arrangements charging beyond what we can afford? Whatever happened to the talks that were going to take place to resolve this? Is the government silent on this? School transport has always been a pressure in this council ever since I was first elected in 2007. With more and more SEND young people in the city and not enough places in our special schools, it's no wonder this budget is being stretched beyond its limit. Although I do note an additional budget allocation of 16.284 million. Is this going to be enough, or will it mean cutting corners and parents and guardians having to fight, as they do now, for fairness for their children? I have mentioned our SEND children, the plan is to go into mainstream schools with a wraparound support. Where is this budgeted for? Or are we expecting schools to pick up this cost? What about the impact on sensitive needs of those children? Has that been considered? There are not enough special places in our special schools, and this pressure is growing, Lord Mayor. Finally, I'd like to highlight the amount of red flags in the budget, which I cannot support because it's unsafe, it's not clear on final grants from the government. Lord Mayor, we could find ourselves called back to revisit this budget in coming weeks and having to make further hard-hitting cuts that will impact already struggling, hard-working families and pensioners choosing heating or eating. Plymouth residents who are again paying the price. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I will be brief. In my 11 years as an elected councillor, I've never been so concerned about a budget as I am with this one. I'd like to draw everyone's attention to page 53, Appendix 7. It's page after page of red. This is the financial risks that we face in Plymouth, and on behalf of the residents of Moorview, I cannot support this budget. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Bridgman. Councillor Lang, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and with your permission, I'll remain seated. I took a very deliberate decision at the start of this financial year to talk loudly and often about the challenges the children's budget is facing. And I have to say I'm really disappointed that Councillor Beer has chosen to make political capital out of children and children's services. It really is beneath her. A report comes regularly to Cabinet which spells out the really challenging issue of the Council's spend on placements for our children in care. National pressures have impacted, leading to a significant increase in the cost of care for children. As a result of a shortage of foster carers nationally, more children are having to be placed in very high-cost residential children's homes, and a small number of Plymouth children, 4 currently, are experiencing very high-cost, unregulated placements. And we've been really open and transparent about that challenge. But many of our children in care are experiencing stable family placements with our foster carers in Plymouth at a much lower cost to the council. But to be able to reduce spend significantly, we need to reduce the number of children experiencing this expensive residential care. We have 64 of them at the moment. We need to keep on recruiting more foster carers and support them to be able to meet the needs of all our children. And our work in this area is really progressing, with double the amount of approved foster carers compared to last year. That's 18 compared to 9, so that we know our improved offer, shaped by our fostering summits, which this budget continues to support, is having a real impact. This additional 16.3 million also supports our Step Forward foster care scheme, which will help those children with more complex needs to move out of residential care and into a family home. It will also pay for the establishment of 3 further Mockingbird constellations. This is a really important development which groups foster families around a central hub with all the support that that brings. There's also further staff and support for SGO, special guardianship, and kinship carers so that more children can remain within their own family networks. And look, I appreciate Councillor Lugger's support for our work and his contribution to our improvement board, but I think it's really important to say that the language of poor mites, when we talk about these children that we support and look after as corporate parents, it's not the way that we talk about those children anymore. Our first children's home is on track to open later this year so that we can stop placing so many children in very high cost care a long way from Plymouth. Further homes will follow. A clear plan is in place to ensure that when it is safe for them to do so, children are supported to return to care back within their families. This is a comprehensive programme of work where we are really starting to see progress in areas that will lead to significantly improved outcomes for our children and young people and reduce costs to the council. This investment in children's social care means we continue to properly look after the children we care for, and as corporate parents we should all welcome this significant uplift and share my thanks to all of our carers and our children's services workforce. So now I'm going to turn to culture. This year's budget once again protects culture, putting it at the heart of the future growth and development of the city. In 2025, it will continue to support the Box, the Theatre Royal, Mount Edgecombe, Smeaton's Tower, the Elizabethan House, the Barbican Theatre, Plymouth Arts Cinema, Plymouth Culture, and Destination Plymouth. Investment in culture is investment, not subsidy. It supports so many areas of work across the council, including health and well-being, education, tourism, placemaking, and the creative industries. It raises the profile of the city, driving civic pride. And as the city seeks to encourage more people to move to Plymouth to take up roles linked to defence, it's culture that will provide interesting things to do: theatre, music, dance, visual arts, heritage, all making Plymouth an attractive and aspirational place to live. Our investment in culture during 2024 continued to change the image of our city, raising perceptions and raising the profile of Plymouth across the globe. At the same time, our investment continues to lever in significant additional funding, and we have even greater ambition for the year ahead. Here's just a few examples of what we can look forward to in 2025. As Councillor Evans said, the Box will receive its 1 millionth visitor, and we've fewer than 40,000 visitors to go to hit that astonishing milestone. We will receive 750,000 Arts Council funding for our See for Yourself cultural programme as a newly designated place partnership.
Sorry, Councillor, your time is up now. If you could finish, please.
May I just conclude? Yeah. So what I want to say is, look, in finishing, there are people out there who want to talk Plymouth down at the moment, that the way the council works is holding us back. I just direct them to Councillor Evans' speech, and they can see their argument simply doesn't hold any water or bear any scrutiny. This is an ambitious budget for an ambitious city, and I will be proud to vote for it. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I have Councillor Penrose next, please?
Well, I've studied the budget over the last couple of weeks and days in detail, and at times reading was really like a thriller. Sometimes it's so alarming, and other times really quite exciting, and my anxiety levels were really quite high most of the time. I was thinking, how is it going to end? how on earth are we going to possibly make this work with all the challenges, with all the costs rising, with all the demands rising, with all the uncertainties, with all the financial risks, and the fact that we are actually paying our rent out of our revenue, out of the total revenue, 83% is going to young people and vulnerable adults in different ways. So it was a great relief to get to the end and read what we are going to manage to do. And about the specific grants and allocations that are going to benefit local. So as a Compton ward councillor, I'd like to say how relieved I am that the budget engagement survey was looked at, and that we are going to have, in addition to prioritising work with the NHS, we're going to have fewer potholes, cleaner green spaces and transport. So on their behalf, I'd like to say we appreciate that. Compton residents, they really understand and have stoically watched how their council tax goes up, and the proportion of it goes up and up to those services I've just talked about. But what they really want to see is something happening around them, the amenities that they're paying for improve and be maintained. So I would like to thank all those who worked out how this budget was actually going to come to the conclusion we've reached. I'd just like to make one other point, and like to thank the people who've worked out that some of the community recovery budget can be spent on improving our roundabouts as we come into the city. And I'd also like in advance to thank the small band of gardeners who are going to plant those hundreds of flowers in the roundabouts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Penrose. Councillor Stevens.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I support this budget because, with a heavy heart, simply because of the recommendation that the Scrutiny Management Team made about asking the Cabinet to restore the balances. And yet the imminent referendum for a directly elected mayor will damage that. And there are forces from outside, which I feel is an act of foolishness. And it's an opportunity to rob Plymouth people to pay Paul or whoever they want to be the Mayor of Plymouth. But equally, I think Councillor Lugger, he mentioned the parable of three Davids. I thought what he did forget was that this budget is trying to restore an element of dignity and need for many of the city's vulnerable people, the homeless people, the people with social care needs, children and adults, people with special needs. The fourth David you forgot to mention was David Cameron, who 14 years ago actually started a program of austerity, which is actually revealing the damage that program has done to many people in our city, many of whom wouldn't be vulnerable if such a program didn't exist. So I do support the budget overall.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stevens. Councillor Riley, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just wanted to say, Tudor, thank you for being ambitious, actually. I don't pretend to be the most politically astute person in the room, but I do remember why I came here. And in the words of Tudor, to protect vulnerable children and adults in our city, to address some of the inequalities from the previous 14 years, families and services pushed to the brink. Those people I have supported both in my role as a councillor, in my other roles, and as corporate parents, something which I think we should all take very seriously. So I welcome the commitment to tackle housing and homelessness crisis, to help provide people with safe accommodation, because everyone deserves a safe, secure home where they can thrive, especially for children in temporary accommodation, so they can have the security of a happy home where they can sit and eat a meal around the table with their family. It's great to see the commitment to building our in-house foster carers, which is going really well. It's working. To see additional allocation to keeping those in our communities safe, and also to say thank you for the investment for the refurbishment of 3 youth centres, one of which is in my own ward, Honnicknell. Looking forward into the future, working with our young people now is how we make that future a better one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rainsford, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Cabinet members and officers have put in a huge amount of work to get to today and present a budget, and I'd like to thank everyone involved. It's not an easy process and has certainly not been made any easier as a result of the requirement now to run a referendum in the next 6 months to consider whether we want another layer of politicians in the city at a cost estimated in the figures of around 410,000. Now, Lord Mayor, this is a significant sum and will impact the non-statutory services we as an authority can provide. The cost has this year come out of balances, but those reserves will need to be replenished. Now, I note the investment planned in my ward to continue to support the soup run, community organisations like Nudge in Union Street, to support CCTV across the city that makes us feel safer, to support our vibrant sports and cultural scene. But I am concerned that the money spent on the referendum, and if elected as city mayor, might impact on these projections for spend in these vital areas going forward. This vanity project, a huge white elephant, will affect future years' estimates we see in the paperwork before us, because this extra politician could have running costs of around £1 million plus a year. We have in front of us a budget which enables our city to support events like the fireworks in August, like music events on the Hoe, continuing commitment to green our city, to upgrade Royal Parade bus access, add new bus routes like that one to the park, to support our theatre and museum. This budget also enables individual councillors to continue to offer help to our local organisations and projects through our community grant. However, these are all non-statutory. That means we don't have to do this. The financial provision does not have to be made. These are the areas which are at risk of cuts when money is tight. They are therefore vulnerable to any additional future costs arising from a new tier of government. Whilst Councillor Lowry and his team have opted to use reserves to cover the cost of this referendum in the short term, I'm genuinely concerned that ultimately, if the referendum was to result in the creation of elected mayoralty, this cost will come out of council services and directly affect residents in my ward and across the city. The directly elected mayor will be an expensive addition to council spending and would almost certainly result in vital services being cut. And remember, some of these costs start in this financial year. That said, my Lord Mayor, this budget, which has been drawn up in difficult financial circumstances and with the additional last-minute pressures of an extra election we've all heard about, has enabled improvements to be made in areas like grass cutting and ensuring even more road defects, aka potholes, are filled. It enables all those ambitious, exciting and necessary projects which Councillor Evans listed. I'm therefore happy to endorse this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Rainsford. And next one is Councillor Lee Finn, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I guess for us on this side of the bench, it's a worry for the first time in our history we'll shortly be having a £1 billion debt burden. This debt will have to be serviced by the revenue account, which ultimately will mean less money for services. We do ask as well, with regard to ambition, are we aiming high enough? I note within the budget set before us today that there's no capital resources have been set aside to reopen the airport. Taking note of the recent announcement by Rachel from accounts with regard to Heathrow and Doncaster airports in particular,
Lord Mayor,
acknowledging the
Lord
net
Mayor,
contribution that
Lord
airports make
point of order
to the country's GDP.
Pause just for 1 moment. Right.
Lord Mayor, we are asked in the Constitution, I understand, to act with courtesy in this chamber. Describing the Chancellor of the Exchequer as Rachel from accounts, I think is demeaning and misogynistic. I would ask that the councillor opposite withdraws those comments and uses proper terminology. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Finn, I ask you to remove your comment and to apologise, please?
I'll apologise in as far as I'll instigate Miss Reeves, Chancellor of the Exchequer, with regard to the Heathrow and Doncaster airports, in particular, acknowledging the net contribution that airports make to the country's GDP. It leaves one to question why Plymouth Labour is at odds with the government and has not set out in the same vein and realised the value that Plymouth Airport would make to the city's GDP and growth going forward. Why the omission? Lord Mayor, we also note that through the audit and governance meetings of late, have not been able to properly scrutinise the budget in depth due to the lateness of documents and the auditor providing himself a get-out clause with a disclaimed opinion. For the last three years, due to problems relating to Labour's unusual pension and interest rate swap transactions, which is leaving us with a £69 million hole as noted in the VFM, how can we possibly have confidence in the budget set before us today, considering this? And I ask you to note diligent audit reporting as source. What is a disclaimed opinion? The auditor shall disclaim the opinion when the auditor is unable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence in which to base his opinion, and the auditor concludes that the possible effects on the financial statements of undetected misstatements, if any, could be both material and persuasive. And on that basis, we will be abstaining on the budget today.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Creswell, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. My Lord Mayor, I support this budget in respect of my portfolio responsibility for education, skills and apprenticeships. This budget will deliver for our children, young people, and consequently deliver for our city. Our 6-point corporate plan highlights, amongst other things, skills and better education for all, and this budget will help to deliver on this. I must start by thanking Councillor Mark Lowry, David Northey, and the whole of the finance team who have done an excellent job in presenting us with a balanced budget. This is by no means easy. 14 years of austerity and squeeze on council budgets cannot be easily swept away. Not to mention the increased demands, particularly from my areas of responsibility, namely special educational needs and homeschool transport, part of that 83% of the budget we keep referring to. I'm pleased that the new Labour government announced an additional £1 billion for SEND in the budget. Plus, in December, Bridget Phillipson announced £740 million for capital build for SEND provision for mainstream schools adaptations. This isn't going to solve the problem, but it's a step in the right direction, and certainly a commitment to greater inclusivity of our special needs children in mainstream schools, where this is possible. I also want to thank the Budget Scrutiny team, particularly for their recommendations 14, 15, 16 and 18, which were constructive and serve as an excellent focus. Firstly, I welcome the additional 0.77 million that's been put into the budget to help process educational healthcare plans, EHCPs, for our SEND children. The growing number of EHCPs has led to significant additional workload within the SEND service. This one-off funding allocated of 0.77 million will provide additional resources to the service. This should be seen for what it actually is. It's short-term investment which will lead to long-term resource savings and rationalisation of the EHC process. It will consequently have a knock-on savings effect into homeschool transport and the high needs block of the dedicated schools grant. Cabinet scrutiny and all members are well aware of the fact that in May 2023, less than 2 weeks after I took over this portfolio role, we had a call from Ofsted and the joint inspection of SEND. This meant we came out in category 3, which was the poorest outcome. Since then, we have been on a major path of improvement. I have to praise the officers, the SEND team leadership, our school partners, Dorset, our improvement partner, the DFE and all of our other partners, and clear, calm leadership from the top, as well as a sense of pace, has brought us to this point. plus the acknowledgement that SEND is everyone's business and everyone's concerned. It's been reflected in Cabinet, it's been reflected by the leader, and also within this chamber. So I offer my thanks to all of you on behalf of Plymouth children and their families. Parents, carers and schools are feeling much more confident in us due to better communication, and these additional resources will deal with EHCP processing in a timely manner, further raising trust. Secondly, the increasing numbers of pupils with EHCPs and lack of special school places within the city and more pupils in the independent sector provision has led to pressures on the home school transport budget through increasing numbers and more expensive routes being needed. Additional budget has been allocated to support these demand pressures of £2.059 million. Since last year, as we promised, we've introduced an independent travel training, and we've got 25 young people who've already qualified, making a saving of over 84,000. And we've got 19 more young people who are on the scheme at the moment. But it's not just about savings, it's about independence for life. In addition, we're continuing to optimise our routes, increase minibus capacity, and revising policies for efficiency. Longer term, we must ensure that our SEND sufficiency plan is delivered, as it will expand and reconfigure our special educational estate, reduce reliance on costly independent placements, and strengthen mainstream schools' capacity to serve complex needs. These are not only financial, but they're education and social benefits. It keeps our children at the heart of their local community, and it saves on expensive homeschool transport. There's a lot of thought in here, but it's a budget that realistically deals with the challenges and offers hopes. And from my portfolio perspective, I totally commend it and ask everyone in this chamber to do likewise.
Thank you, Councillor Creswell. Councillor Wood, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. Notwithstanding some of the announcements that Councillor Evans made about the investment in the city, I do think many residents across the city would be incredibly concerned about the sheer scale of debt forecasted and the accuracy of our forecasts and the amount of a council's revenue budget which will be spent on servicing the monies owed over many decades. Take forecasting, for example. Now, the Children's Directorate last year had an overspend of 10.78 million. This year it has an overspend of 11 million. Now, over those 2 years, that is an overspend of 36%. Now, that's a fair comparison to make because Devon County Council, they forecasted an overspend, they had an overspend rather, of just 16%. So our overspend was twice the amount of Devon County Council. It's also worth looking at the debt level, which is frankly staggering. Many residents would be shocked to learn that the debt level for March 24 was 775 million. By March 27, it will be 1.2 billion. That is an increase of 398 million, or 51% in just 3 years. That is an absolutely staggering amount of money which will be placed upon the people of Plymouth over the next 50 to 75 years. So we need to be enormously careful when we are putting forward projects that run over budget, but do not run to time or do not deliver the quality that we are requesting. That figure means that per head, in 2024, each individual person, man, woman and child, owed £2,880. It will rise to £4,362 in just 3 years. These are huge sums of money. So I think we need to look at, did the council ask for the amount of money it required out of government? And if it did not, why not? And if it did ask, it didn't receive it. I think we need to be very careful as well, because we need to understand just how much of a council's revenue budget will now be spent on servicing this debt, and by how much this will increase every year to March 27. Just how much of our outgoings are being spent on servicing the sheer level of debt that the council has over decades. There's a couple of points I'd just like to pick up. Now, we highlighted that in transport, 4.5 million will be put towards highway works. Now, we're responsible for 532 miles of roads. So I'd like to know just how many miles of road will be repaired and resurfaced for that 4.5 million. It's also worth questioning just how much parking charges will increase at a time that we're trying to improve the city centre, to bring people into the city centre, making large commitments to the city centre. We put people off. I can tell you now, an awful lot of my money when I shopped at Christmas did not go in the city centre. It went to Amazon, or it went to Next, where I could park for free, or it went to Denelm, where you could park for free. It didn't necessarily go to the city centre. That's at the same time that the bus fares went up by 50%. So we're making it more difficult for people to actually go in and use the city centre at a time that we're putting in enormous amounts of money to fund it. So as much as I listen and hear about some of the projects that are going on across the city, about how we're trying to improve it, we need to be enormously careful that we do not undermine the value of those projects through other means such as parking charges or increased bus charges. We need to be enormously careful that we do not attack people's purses by raising council tax by 5% above the rate of inflation. And we need to be really careful about where we are sitting in the next 50 to 75 years, servicing a huge amount of debt. 51% in 3 years is utterly enormous. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Can I have Councillor Poyser now, please?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'd just like to start by saying thank you to all the hard work of the officers. I know that budget setting goes back several months, back from October, working with directorates, some very difficult decisions being made, lots of uncertainty. So to get to this point today, where on a day like this, we get to hear the vast range of services that the council officers, is quite staggering, really, what we do on the budget that what we were given. One of the areas I wanted to focus on here was something that each and every one of us as councillors has a direct impact on within our local community, or we quickly can affect change in some way, and that's through our community grants, and that's through the Living Streets Fund as well. Now, I understand that this year the Living Streets Fund has now been set at £3,000, which it was previous years, but that was reduced under the previous Conservative administration from £5,000 to £2,000, so £3,000, and that hasn't changed since then. Not only that, there is additional pressure on that community grant. We're being told as councillors that we need to use it for securing green spaces, for our Living Streets grant to be introducing double yellow lines. Yeah, this isn't really a value that community grants should be giving to our local community groups. Yeah, seems like a very real resistance to empowering our communities, and it's disappointing that we haven't reversed some of those cuts that were previously undertaken under the previous Conservative administration. So I'd just like councillors to reflect on that here today, because I believe under Councillor Bingley, the word "they're not used" was mentioned. So if we really want to be empowering our communities and making a difference, because we know what we want in our local communities, in our neighbourhoods, and how we can affect change, we need to be given the grants to invest in local community groups. So I just want councillors to reflect on that point. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Dan, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I want to talk about the other 17% of the budget, which we haven't really talked about today. The leader alluded to the fact that we've got Plymouth Active Leisure and that we are investing. And this is really important because looking after the health and well-being of our residents is a key thing for the city. So to be able to invest in the Mountbatten Centre, to be able to invest in Tyneside, to be able to upgrade the facilities we have up at the Live Centre is really important, not only for the health and well-being, but for the aspiration of the city. And something we haven't mentioned today,
is that just a little reminder, because we did bring this in a couple of years ago, and it is still very, very much appreciated, the fact that we still choose to keep Mount Wise free for swimming in one of the most deprived areas of the city. But children and families from all over the city go to Mount Wise, so everybody benefits. Which leads me very nicely onto the £3 million that we've invested with Plymouth Argyle Community Trust and the Argyle Football Club into Fulston Park, the new community hub, which is opening in March at Fulston Park, formerly known and still is known as the Brickfields for Rugby and Athletics, but it's going to be Fulston Park as a health and wellbeing hub. This is going to be an absolutely aspirational change for sports in our city. And we've done what we can to make sure that we can make sure that that ambition that the city has in this area is there. And just as a little aside, I did meet Adam Peat at the Life Centre last week. And you know what? That's because Plymouth has aspiration to get the best swimmers and the best divers. And this is what we should be proud of. So that's the sport bit. We wouldn't be able to do a lot of the stuff that we do in the city without our staff. And we have a very, I think, a very small HROD budget, but with it, we do a lot. And it is absolutely key. For those who have sat on scrutiny know that we have had a lot of people come and go at the high levels, and we've managed to appoint 9 new senior leaders across the council over the last 12 months. Those in scrutiny know that agency spend is still a pressure, but we have to have it because without it, we would not be able to cover specialist services like in children's social care. We wouldn't be able to have seasonal staff in the council to deliver some of those areas that we want to have. And we wouldn't be able to have some of the interim posts, which are absolutely key for the transformational work that we want to do in the city. And besides that, we have managed to have 124 people now currently studying with 42 new starters apprenticeships. So we are investing in our staff. But we're also a really value-driven council, and somewhere in the budget it says we are committed still to the national living wage, and that is why we have to pass on more money to adult social care, because it's not for the council staff that are employed directly for the council, it's also for the council staff that we commission with. And then the final bit of my portfolio is known as customer experience. 2 little words which mean an awful, awful lot to our city. We've currently got an interim role for our customer experience, and this is why we need to have that person. After 15 years of austerity, so thank you, Councillor Stevens and Councillor Creswell for talking about it. We cannot turn around 15 years of austerity overnight. And Councillor Nicholson, I'd like to remind you as well that the Labour Party have been in control nationally for 8 months. We can do a lot, but we can't perform miracles. So we are looking at new transformation programmes, aligning money together to look at how we can manage the increased demand that we have as a council in homelessness, in social care and in children's social care. And that is built because people have more complex needs, they have more demands, and we have less money. So there is money in there for transformational services. But we also have sort of business as usual. We talk about customer experience and we still invest in it and we still try and do our best because things are changing. So just as a few figures about some of the background information that we have, over the last year, there were over nearly 3 million website things. We had over 60,000 calls into the contact centre. And we've set up new things to support our residents who are digitally excluded and can't help. So we're still doing a lot, but we need to do more. But this budget here is not just about the big shiny things. It's also making the customer experience every day better for all of our residents across the city, and we should be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor McCarthy, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. As the leader described, Councillor Tom Briers-Delve is no doubt very busy today, dealing with his beautiful newborn. So on his behalf, I'd like to highlight how this budget supports the city's council's net zero ambitions and aspirations. Net zero is about cutting carbon emissions, but it's not just about reducing global warming. It's about providing our children, our grandchildren, all of us, with cleaner air to breathe and green and blue environments that help us and our communities thrive in the future. I'd like to draw members' attention to paragraph 31.1 of the budget report. The table here breaks down a hugely ambitious capital programme into various themes. As can be seen, we plan to invest 65.9 million, yes, that's right, 65.9 million in net zero initiatives over the 5 years of the capital programme, the second highest area of investment after the economy. This is really important. As I heard as a member of the Natural Infrastructure and Growth Scrutiny Committee on the 12th of February, this programme of investment supports the three areas of focus in the Net Zero Action Plan, 25 to 28. I'm pleased to say that the Scrutiny Committee endorsed the plan, which will be reported to us here at our March Council meeting. As I mentioned, though, the Net Zero Action Plan will support three areas for decarbonisation: transport, buildings, and behaviour change. For transport, this budget will continue to see the rollout of EV charging infrastructure and the EV Car Club. And of course, we're all excited to see the first of 50 electric buses arrive in Plymouth in just a couple of months. Excitingly, for buildings, this budget will continue to see the rollout of EV charging. For buildings, we'll see the rollout of delivery of externally funded £400 million heat network, having been shortlisted of one of just 6 towns and cities nationally to form the first heat network zones. This is real thought leadership. As for behavioural change, initiatives in addition to continuing our collaborative working with Plymouth Net Zero Partnership, Plymouth Growth Board, Food Plymouth and others, we will be recruiting recycling officers as part of the street services restructure to improve recycling levels. Again, really important stuff. Now, whilst we all understand these are incredibly tough financial times, it should be noted that this administration, having restored the Climate Emergency Investment Fund ratchet in last year's budget, has again increased this further as part of this year's budget review process. I very much welcome that, as it will enable us to support future net zero projects and initiatives. And as we heard from Councillor Bryce Delve just recently, the work on net zero, coordinated by the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Department, is already saving the council an estimated £500,000 annually. We have to remember that climate change is not an us and them situation. It affects all of us. So I welcome the fact that we are developing a cross-party consensus on our net zero work. This is vital, not only for society today, but also future generations, especially young people, who I have no doubt will hold us all to account for the actions we did, didn't, and do take to address this very real threat of climate breakdown. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Councillor Bannerman, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. With many families and individuals in Plymouth continuing to live through the cost of living crisis, this prospect of an increase in council tax can, of course, incite anxiety, fear and frustration. However, reading through this budget before us, it's clear that we can't give Plymouth residents the support needed without this enhancement. There is no low-hanging fruit left to pick to save a few quid here and there. There has already been challenging decisions made over the years to cut services needed for many. We must be reminded that we've already lost 60p in every pound over the past 14 years central government. And with all the will in the world, we're not miraculously getting that funding back. I feel that this budget is not just balanced by financial cost, but balanced by priority of need for the vast variety of necessary services our residents need. Adult social care, children's social care, SEND provision, education, housing, homelessness, buses, street services, to name just a few. By not supporting this budget,
you're not supporting the services and the individuals that live in need of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Noble, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I just wanted to, there's lots in this budget that's very positive, especially for residents living in Moorview. We've got the Derriford Northern Corridor, and it's got £23 million of work going on there. Residents are already noticing benefits. For the first time ever, there's a small crossing just at the back of the Tesco's car park. It's never been there. That's already something that will make it much safer for residents. And we've still got, there's a lot of work to do, and you know, disruption's been minimised, so we must thank the team there. But you know, that's going to really help people get around. Also, there's also work around Derriford Hospital, and although it's perhaps not a council-funded project, we've got the new emergency department. It's not just some CGI image on a election leaflet. It's actually something the government has funded, and it will deliver change and improve local people, the outcomes for local people. Last Thursday I went hedge planting in the rain as part of the community tree nursery, but it's good to see you know, the community Plymouth and South Devon Community Forest. I mean, there's areas around Liam that were once just flat bits of grass, now have do have woodland there and lots of animals living, and let's hope that we can spread that to more areas of the city in the future. So I think there's lots of very positive things for my part of the city. It will benefit the businesses like Amazon and every that are distribution businesses in our area, and also make it a greener area for you know, with flowers and things for our wildlife, because that thrives as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Noble. Now, it has just come to my notice that apparently Councillor McCarthy's speech was his maiden speech, so I think we should congratulate him. Councillor Coker.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Lord Mayor, I obviously rise to support this budget, and in the area that I'm Cabinet member for, I just think it's worth just looking at where we've come. Our Transforming Cities Fund comes to an end next month. An award of £58 million that has been delivered to sustainable transport in this city. And the way we work has delivered another £89.4 million of private sector investment into our city. So working together is really, really important. As my colleagues have mentioned, you will see over the next few months the first of the new fleet of 50 electric buses coming to Plymouth. Something I'm really proud that this city has managed to achieve. Together with the 4.5 million of investment I have already announced at budget scrutiny to retain all our non-commercial bus routes in the city for the second year in a row. Unlike the colleagues opposite who cut them whilst they were in charge. I'm also delighted, yes, Conservative, Councillor Nicholson, I stand corrected. But you were one, I remember. Together with this investment, I have been able, I and this administration, despite various claims, have been able to introduce a new bus route between Plympton and Plymstock. We have listened to what people have asked for, and we have delivered. This budget allows us to continue our programme of tackling more road defects, continuation of the velocity machine that amendments to a Conservative budget by us delivered, continuation and expansion of our brand new seat and repair team out looking at delamination and surface defects ward by ward, a reduction in carbon emissions, a central management system controlling 8,000 street lighting, the improved electrification of our highways fleet, and a programme of new halogen lamps in all traffic signals across the city, reducing the cost of our energy. I'm also pleased to announce that the 6.5 million Sustainable Transport Programme enables the provision of new walking and cycling infrastructure in the city. Lord Mayor, we have just heard from Active Travel UK that we have been awarded this year a fantastic £1.2 million to continue our promotion project, which improves people's mental and physical well-being, as well as delivers other projects highlighted in our local walking and cycling infrastructure plan. Lord Mayor, before I hand it over to Councillor Dingle to talk about the Torpoint and Tamar Bridge, I just want to make an announcement that I know is really special to two people in this chamber. Everyone in the chamber will remember with great affection former Councillor Brian Vincent, who sadly passed away in April 2023. At our meeting on the 19th of May, Brian was posthumously made an honorary alderman of the city in recognition of his long service, including his time as both Deputy Lord Mayor and Lord Mayor. Brian was a strong advocate for the environment and the importance of planning and transport, and championing the views of local people in his area, both as a backbencher and cabinet member. I am therefore so proud and pleased to be able to announce that with extra funding we have secured, I aim to invest in improvements to a well-used footpath that runs from Efford to Marsh Mills, which was so dearly loved by Brian and his partner Pauline, and regularly used. In honour of Brian's huge commitment to Plymouth and his tireless work for the people of Efford, we intend to improve and rename this path the Brian Vincent Way, as a tribute to him and the residents that he represented. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Coker. Now, is there anybody else who wishes to speak? Councillor Dingle.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Before us today is the Tamar Bridge and Torpoint Ferry Revenue Budget and Capital Programme. To fall into line with Cornwall Council's procedure, we are now including this in our annual budget as in line with both councils' constitutions. The budget for 2025-2026 will meet the requirements to provide a balanced and affordable budget, even though traffic levels have remained below pre-COVID levels. Both joint chairs continue to lobby government to, 1, have the ability to apply RPI locally, and 2, to seek a long-term package of financial support. We continue to work with our local MPs to develop the introduction of Tamar 2050 and to provide a robust agenda to provide more traction regarding future support. The joint committee resolution can be found in the minutes of the committee meeting of December the 6th, 2024. Therefore, I fully support the endorsement of the budget as a joint chair, as supported by both cabinets. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dingle. Councillor Aspinall, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I want to make the council aware that this year we've been very fortunate where public health budget is concerned. We actually got £1 million extra, which is brilliant. When you think of all the work that the public health team do, and it isn't just within my sphere of my cabinet, there's other, Councillor Dan has mentioned the work they do with her, and I know they work with Councillor Penberthy and with Councillor Hayden. But within my sphere, we're looking at that work they do within the drug scene to make sure that we are looking after people who need treatment, that we are working with them to provide alcohol treatment centres. And if we think about stopping smoking, that takes a little bit of our budget up. And obviously that work is going to expand when the vaping bill goes to Parliament later on this summer. But it's not just those things that we can see, it's other things that happen outside and about. If we look at the Healthy Weight programme within the schools, we look at basically looking at the immunisation programmes that we put together. We're going to have to make sure that this year, within our budget, we are improving the offer that's out there for vaccinations. Unfortunately, we know there's been some drop-off of uptake on the programme for the COVID and for the flu jab, so we need to really push to help our NHS. But the main bit of my budget, obviously, is adult social care. And whilst there has been an improvement in the amount of money that's been given to us by the government, which is very, very welcome, I have to say to you that it is still a growing need within the city for social care. And it isn't just older people. If we think at the moment we have 1,104 older people receiving packages, but there's also 233 younger people between 18 and 64. If we look at the number of people we're supporting in the community, that rises each year. We're supporting 3,609 people within the community setting. And again, it's 2/3 older people to 1/3 younger people. We have improved how many people are being supported by direct payments, which means that they at least can choose what they want to use their budget on. Now in this one, it's the other way around. It's 1/3 of older people like to use it, but 2/3 of younger people like to have that say in what they do. And obviously, we have been impinged with the fact that we now need to go to a living wage. And we welcome the fact that we are going to be doing that, but that has taken a chunk out of the monies that we were given. And we are looking now to how we support the care home settings. We have a very loyal and honourable relationship with the settings that we provide within the care setting, whether that's residential care, extra care, or all those settings. But we have to work out how we're going to be paying them and what prices we're going to be paying them. And after the budget has been set today, that is our officer's job, is to look at that and to finalise some of that. So our teams work remarkably hard. Our relationship with LiveWell and the services they provide for us, they're all part of that team trying to keep our older people and younger people safe. So I would say a big, big thank you to all of our staff, whether they're working in the care sector out in the community, or whether they're the staff that we have in the council, led by Gary and by Stephen Madden, our Public Health Director. We say a big, big thank you to them. Plymouth could not be the city it is without every one of them. So, Lord Mayor, I commend this budget and I say a big thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Penberthy, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I would like to start by thanking Councillor Lowry, Mr Northey and everyone who's worked with them in delivering a balanced budget proposal in extremely difficult circumstances. The work that you've all done in doing this and doing it so early is really impressive. Lord Mayor, for your information, and as reported to the Audit and Governance Committee, I would like to point out that our audited accounts for years 1920, 2021, 21 and 22, and 22-23 were all signed off in December and will be published in full before the end of this week. Maybe members opposite, especially those who are members of Audit and Governance, should get their facts right before spreading misinformation. Lord Mayor, I have not been hiding the fact that we're in the middle of a housing crisis. I've spoken about that in the Chamber, at meetings of Cabinet, while being grilled at scrutiny, when out in the community, and in conversations with the media. Lord Mayor, sadly, we continue to see rising demand for those who are facing homelessness. Last year, we increased our budget to help tackle this. I'm pleased that this year, that budget level is being continued. For years, administrations of all colours have been, at the request of our scrutineers, asking government for homelessness funding to be more coherent and announced earlier. Sadly, for many years, that request has fallen on deaf ears. I'm really pleased that this year, the new Labour government has listened. We've already had our funding announced for next year, and in big blocks, not a drip of small reactive pots. We've also received an additional £724,000 from the new Labour government to help us to do more to tackle homelessness with a big focus on prevention. Lord Mayor, a big thank you to the Deputy Prime Minister and the Chancellor of the Exchequer for that. Lord Mayor, not only have we therefore got an increased revenue budget, we also have a capital programme to provide better temporary accommodation. And I would like to thank all of our partners who work with us to tackle homelessness. And Lord Mayor, housing isn't only about homelessness. It also helps us to begin the solutions in this budget. Our partnerships with DCHLG, Homes England and housing associations will be driving the delivery of new permanent affordable homes, as well as supporting the delivery of new open market and rented homes. Whilst our Housing Investment Fund, as part of Plan for Homes 4, might not be large, we're using it to lever hundreds of millions of pounds of external investment. Actually, most private sector investors would be thrilled to get the level of investment levered from the investments that we make. Lord Mayor, moving from housing, we are a major landowner with a big portfolio of properties in addition to our commercial estate. Over the past 20 months, we have begun deep diving into our corporate and FM areas. We've begun to take remedial and long-term actions. Increases in both the revenue and capital budgets for this reflect the learning from the work we've done so far and enable us to move forward. I would like to thank Mark and David especially for that, because it's going to make a lot of difference, and I'm looking forward to discussing this with scrutiny in due course, as requested at our budget sessions with them. Lord Mayor, this budget also allows us to continue our non-statutory work to support the growth and well-being of our city. We can develop and deliver work on the inclusive growth pillar of our new economic strategy. We can continue to support our VCSE. We can continue to work in communities, and so much more. Lord Mayor, this budget comes after 14 years of austerity, 14 years when national and local services have been hollowed out by the former government, 14 years that was catastrophically worsened under the leadership of the shortest-lived Prime Minister in this country's history. It also comes after 2 years of two chaotic Conservative-led administrations here in Plymouth. Lord Mayor, it's worth remembering that members opposite us today have criticised us for everything we've done. But Lord Mayor, it'll take more than 8 months for national government to sort that out. Lord Mayor, despite all their criticism today, members opposite haven't made any proposals to deliver what they want. It seems that they want to spend money they don't want to borrow and don't want to make cuts to fund the things they want to do. All hot air. and no action. Lord Mayor, the leaders presented us with a positive budget. It's ambitious, it delivers for the vulnerable, it delivers for the city. I will be voting for it.
Thank you, Councillor. Then Councillor Hayden, please.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Again, I will rise to support this budget. Many people have talked about what sits in my portfolio, but I just would like to remind everybody in the chamber regarding our libraries. This budget does not close any libraries whatsoever. We have seen a huge amount of people come over our doors for one reason or another. Just to give you a little bit of an idea, rhyme time, story time, over 17,000 young people have took part in that. Our libraries have gone more into a modern way of service. We now have chip and pin card reader payments, which to you or me might not mean a lot, but to the library service and to our people of Plymouth, it means a hell of a lot. The budget before us will hopefully will carry on supporting our violence against women and girls funding. Last year, we've seen 9 organisations which helped grassroots work. So the budget for the funding was split in half, and we then was able to help local people. We're hoping that this will grow with this new budget. We've already spoke about the park. As you all know, we should be very proud of our park. Our bereavement services has come a long way. We've been open now for 6 months. To give you an idea, we've served 1,295 services in 6 months. The comments that the staff are receiving, the comments on Facebook, is just so positive. Councillor Coker's already talked about the bus going from Plymstock to Plympton. I might let you into a little secret. It's actually going to stop outside the park as well for all those people who have asked for it. We've listened, we've delivered. Just talking about events, you see also in this budget, VE Day and VJ Day. There is money in there to support. Let's never forget those people that sacrificed for us to be here today. Our British Firework Championship will still be going on. More live music in our city, Seafest. Also in the budget, you will see the accreditation money for the Purple Flag. This helps our evening and nighttime economy. What this budget does is keeps us a safe city. A safe city, a place to live and work and visit. And with this budget, I have to say, I know everyone says it, and I know Councillor Larry goes, oh, please don't keep doing it. But thank you, Councillor Larry. Thank you to David Northey and his team. And for all those officers who sit behind the scenes that we never seem to see, that play around with those figures, this is a great budget. I would highly recommend that everybody supported it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hayden. Councillor Krishnak, please.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. I eagerly listened to the comments from both sides of the chamber. And what I find interesting is that hard work that was put by David and his team was presented in this chamber. Sound budget. Sound budget that addresses the issue that are so crucial to our town. And I find it really difficult to understand people saying, I cannot vote for this budget because of these red marks, because of this, of that. Please, can you then suggest something that we can debate in this council chamber that will be proactive, not criticizing just for the sake of the criticism? Thank you very much, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. I have Councillor Loveridge, final one. Thank you.
Thank you, my Lord Mayor. A budget is just not set on a number of pages. It's a reflection of our priorities, our values, and our responsibilities to those we serve. Right now, what I see is a plan that places us in a very bad position, risking financial instability that could burden our services and ultimately our residents. We must ask ourselves, are we being responsible stewards with public fundings? Are we making the right choices for the long-term sustainability of our local council and our community? The reality is, if we continue down this path, we may be forced to make cuts that none of us want to see. We owe it to our constituency to ensure their money is managed wisely, and I, for one, am not prepared to support this budget that jeopardises our financial future. But as it stands, and I cannot support a financial plan that leads us deeper into the red. Thank you, my Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor.
My Lord Mayor.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak before I ask the leaders to sum up? Councillor Hendy, please.
I'd like to move a procedural motion to remove the time limit on the leaders summing up Appendix 1, 6.1.
Have you got a seconder for this? You have.
I'd like to second the motion.
Through you, Lord Mayor. So we have a motion on the floor to suspend standing orders, the rules of debate, Appendix 1, 6.1. I think we'll use the electronic system.
Thank you. That vote is carried. So I will now ask the leaders to sum up, and no restriction on time. Thank you.
Lord Mayor, thank you very much indeed. I was asked earlier on to provide some clarification about what the Labour government had been doing to the country and for the country since it was elected. The implication being from the Conservatives and the people who used to be Conservatives but aren't now but might be again, is to give you some facts about what they've been up to. So I thought I would do that, and in order to do that, because there's so much of it, that's why we had to do that procedural motion. So pin your ears back, because I'm now going to give you some facts. So what has Labour done since it was elected? So it's been the costly Tory Rwanda plan. We've heard a lot about that, haven't we? Set up the National Wealth Fund, dealt decisively with far-right riots, started the COVID corruption inquiry. That's COVID corruption that happened under the Conservative government. You'll remember that. Some of you who were Conservatives at the time might also remember that. Given the green light to bring public bus services under local control, that started. You've seen some of that happening. Wouldn't happen in Plymouth under a directly elected mayor, of course, because we wouldn't have that power with a directly elected mayor. You need a strategic mayor for that. Authorised compensation for people affected by the infected blood scandal. Set up the NHS 24/7 111 helpline for mental health. Created a child poverty task force. Announced free breakfast clubs for kids to be rolled out from April 25. Introduced plans to remove all hereditary peers from the Lords. Introduced renters' rights bill, railways in public ownership, Hillsborough law to ensure those responsible for public disasters will never escape justice, although that doesn't apply to Liz Truss or Kwasi Kwarteng, unfortunately. Veterans, care leavers, And domestic abuse victims will be given better access to social housing. Warm homes for all renters will lift over 1 million renters out of fuel poverty. Employment rights bill to be tabled. Plans to tackle benefit fraud will save 1.6 billion over 5 years. Women's Justice Board to reduce the number of women going to prison or reoffending. Crackdown on online sale of knives and gangs targeting children. Ban on ninja swords. That's just some of the things that the Labour government has done. I mean, it's always interesting to hear Councillor Nicholson pontificate, isn't it? Because you have to remember, and most of you in this chamber will not remember Councillor Nicholson's record on this council when he was leader, but he left us the worst performing council in England. I took over in 2003 following his disastrous leadership of this council, when if you want to know about finances in a bit of a way, if you want to know how not to manage an authority, then can I remind you to look back on the comprehensive performance assessment from the year 2003, because it was an unmitigated disaster. Well, he did. He is responsible for the 2 largest rises in council tax in Plymouth's history. Don't forget that. In 2 consecutive years, in just 12 months, he put up the council tax in 1 year by 14% and in another year by 12.5%. In just 12 months. And in just 12 months. So I love a lecture from Councillor Nicholson about ambition and how to run a council, but I really don't think he's fit to do it, do you? Also, when I took over the council off the Tories later on, a few years later on, I had to actually state publicly...
Well, on a point of order, we're supposed to be treating with people respect. My record on this council over 30-odd years is not up for question. We're proposing a budget, and I expect the Constitution to be applied.
Well, I'm sorry, I thought people wanted facts. That wasn't my opinion.
Councillor Evans, may I ask you just to stick to the facts and ignore it?
Thank you, Lord
Keep
Mayor.
going.
I'm happy to put on record that it was a fact that under Councillor Nicholson's leadership, it led to Plymouth in 2003 being adjudicated by the Audit Commission as
My Lord
being...
Mayor, on a point of order, my record, when I was the leader of the council in 2000, isn't on the agenda today. Treating people with respect needs to be, the leader needs to apply the Constitution, and I'm not going to put up with it. Now, Lord Mayor, you're here to uphold democracy, as you very well know, and I'm not being insulted by Councillor Evans in a budget debate. So can you please hold him to account so that we actually talk about the budget of the day and not history of 30 years ago?
Right. Now, just one moment. Can I ask you to leave out the personal comments and contact, if Councillor Nicholson, if you have a problem, you can report this to the monitoring officer.
Lord Mayor, I'm not reporting it to anyone. I'm having it dealt with now. We're here to deal with a budget. We're not here to talk about and slag me off as an individual. I won't put up with it.
Hear, hear.
Oh. Right. Now, just one moment. That is going totally out of this situation and argument. Councillor Evans, could you carry on with your point?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. 14 years of the Tories. 14 years of the Tories. And after 7 months, they're mewling and puking because we haven't sorted out their mess. We had an enormous mess nationally to sort out. We have an enormous mess to sort out locally because for 14 long years, the Tories took money away And by the way, this isn't me saying this is Rishi Sunak, who was one of the 4 prime ministers I think we've had in the last 3 years, who said, and he was quite proud of this, that he took money away from deprived areas and gave it to areas like his in Richmond in Yorkshire. 14 years of that cost this city £675 million and counting. And you have the nerve to come in here and say the public is taking on the cost of government. I think one of you said, one of the Conservatives said, or it might have been one of the former Conservatives, but it was certainly a Conservative that said that the public is taking on the cost of government and it's not fair. Well, what do you think's been happening for the last 14 years? Why do you think council tax is the height it is? Because you have removed revenue support grant, £675 million and counting. That is money that used to come from areas like Richmond in North Yorkshire and Surrey and London and be distributed to areas like ours to cover the cost of providing essential services. That's why. So when you say, actually, I think what we need is an apology from you Conservatives for that. And, you know, today we have had the biggest parade of cant and hypocrisy I've ever heard. And, you know, by the way, I think my speech was full of ambition for this city. And I think, Councillor Nicholson, you might have said that it was lacking in ambition, whatever I'd said. Because you say it every year. You say it every year.
Lord Mayor, on a point of order, the Leader of the Council is misquoting what I said. Would he please retract? I didn't say we didn't lack ambition. It's inappropriate. He's twisting it. It's not acceptable, Lord Mayor.
One moment. I mean, this is all very fascinating, but actually it's not, it is not discussing what we're here to do today. And if we can't carry on and let Tudor stick to the subject and finish his speech without exchanging, you know, insults with the other side, I'm going to call a halt and go to the vote. Last chance, Tudor.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'll do my best to keep it out of the personal.
I hope you do.
Yes, I will. Well, you've told me. So we've had, from some of the Conservatives, we've had some rather, I think, hurtful remarks made about the staff in this council. Because what they've been implying today in their statements, and all of you on the backbenches who've said this, implied that this budget is not safe and that the finances of this city are not secure, are actually maligning not this Labour council, you're maligning the staff, whose job it is to make sure that what is in front of us today is the opposite of not safe or not secure. They couldn't. They are prevented from doing it. It is their job. That is the job of the 151 officer, to tell us if the proposals that we're putting forward are unsound in any way. So, I'm going to bring you some hot news now, because there are 1 or 2 councillors here. I'm looking, I mustn't use their name in case they get offended. But some people will remember the olden days in this council when we used to have on budget day something called a Type 4 amendment. And a Type 4 amendment, Lord Mayor, was an amendment that could be used by councillors to call to the well the Chief Finance Officer of the council to clarify matters of fact. Now, we no longer have a Type 4 amendment in the Constitution, so I'm not able to do that. But if I was able to do that, I'm now going to tell you what David Northey would say if he were standing here. Because I can tell you now exclusively that all the things that you are worrying about, Councillor Finn, about the government giving us permission, Mr. Northey has been on a phone call with the government, as I alluded to earlier on today. And in that conversation with the government, Mr. Northey was able to get an assurance from the government, who he spoke to, that we would be, within 2 weeks, getting a letter of confirmation from the government to say that the capitalisation direction was in order. And I would like to thank Mr. Northey in particular, not just for today, not just for last week, but for carrying the weight of that for months. And I really, David, we owe you a great deal of thanks, a great deal of thanks. Thanks that we'll never be able to repay. He has had to listen for months on end for idle speculation in the media promulgated by Conservative spokespeople who are in this council chamber today. And they owe David Northey and all the staff in this council a tremendous apology for their conduct. It is it's been disgusting to hear the way in which those Conservatives have maligned our hard-working council officials for their own political ends. It's been an outrage. And today it ends. It should end today. And it should end with an apology from that gentleman at the front. Now, if I could just turn to the fact of accounts, because if I was able to move a Type 4 amendment and bring Mr. Northey to the well, I would be asking him about the state of the council's accounts, because as you know from some of the rather misleading statements by front benchers for the Conservatives today, they were implying that our accounts were not in order. And there was some phrase they used, distrained, was it? Was that the phrase you used, Councillor Finn? I can't remember now. It was something like that, implying that there was something untoward with the accounts. Well, here's the interesting thing about that. The reason our auditors used that word was not in any way criticism of the council. It wasn't in any way criticism of the payment for the pension distraint. It was in fact a device for the auditors to use to enable us to continue as a council. It was their choice of words. It was their, and what did they say to Mr. Northey there, who had been here under Type 4 amendment? He would have said to you that the reason they did that, he would have firstly said, we are one of a few councils at the moment that are in the position that we are in. Because most councils in this city, in this country, because of the state of the audit service nationally, right, are in a position where they haven't had their accounts signed off. There are hundreds of district councils and county councils and unitary councils that haven't had their accounts signed off because of the crisis in audit under the previous Tory government. Brought
Point of order.
Audit to its knees.
What's the point of order, please?
The point of order, my Lord Mayor, is that Councillor Evans is attempting to speak on behalf of an officer who doesn't have the ability to speak and drawing into question the impartiality by referencing a political party, which I don't believe is in order, my Lord Mayor.
Which part of the Constitution, which rule has been broken?
Which part of the Constitution, which rule has been broken, please?
He's bringing into question and disrepute the impartiality of an officer by speaking on their behalf and referencing political parties, which I don't believe is in order.
Well, that's not giving us which part of the Constitution has been broken.
So
Tell us which rule.
you need to tell us which rule is being broken, just not make a comment on the subject.
Lord, we're on a point of order. May I refer you to Article 10 of the Constitution, paragraph 1.17, functions the responsible finance officer, Service Director of Finance, to make such decisions as are lawful or financially prudent. After consulting the head of public paid service and monitoring officer, the finance officer will report to full council and to the council's external auditors. And then it goes on to say, in relation to providing advice, the responsible finance officer or designee will provide advice on the scope and powers of authority to make decisions, maladministration, financial impropriety, and other matters related to finance. So when Councillor Evans talks about the ability for officers to report to full council, I don't see why the Constitution doesn't allow the Section 151 officer to address council himself, as indeed the monitoring officer and the chief executive have previously.
I'm been discussing with my officers here. There is no provision for to speak about this in the middle of a debate. Exactly what is your point of order?
Well, so after the leader is concluded, Lord Mayor, may I ask under the terms of the Constitution for the Section 151 officer to address the council before council votes on the budget?
No, everything's in the report, I went on. So can he carry on?
If Councillor Evans is finished, then we'll move to the vote. If he hasn't, he can carry on.
Okay. Oh, gosh sake.
Point of order, my Lord Mayor. Can we just call for the vote?
Just what I was about to discuss. Councillor Evans, have you something to say forward, or shall I move forward and call for the vote?
Forgive me, Lord Mayor, but a number of remarks were made by the Conservatives and the former Conservatives who raised issues about audit, and I need to correct the record. By the way, Mr. Northey has reported to the council. If you look on page 1 of today's papers, there's a report there from David Northey, and he's reporting to council. That's what this is. And by the way, what I was doing was using something we call in the political trade a rhetorical device. Have you heard of it? So that's what I'll continue just for a minute more. I just wanted to get these couple of points over.
1 minute, Councillor, and then I'm calling the vote.
Lord Mayor, we need to talk about the audit. The fact is that 4 of the council's 5 outstanding audits are actually signed off, and 1 more is to be done very shortly. We'll be one of the few in the country that that's happened to, and that's because the auditors told Mr. Northey that we, unlike many local authorities, were ready to have that done. So far from it being a crisis in audit, it's actually the complete opposite. And again, I call upon you Conservatives and you former Conservatives to apologise to our hard-working staff who have done so much. David, Ollie, Wendy, Helen and Carolyn. And they deserve much better than your snide remarks that you have made to them today. Lord Mayor, there is one more thing to say on the subject of a democratically elected mayor, which I think it's important to say today, because nobody has mentioned this. But in addition to the 83% of the council's budget that has to go on children's social care and adult social care, in addition, the mayor's salary and entourage.
Lord Mayor, point of order. We've gone over 1 minute. It's 1 minute. So can we go to the vote, please?
Well, we have to have a vote on that. Can I just finish?
I've been timing this. You've still got 10 seconds left.
The Lord Mayor, the directly elected mayor's salary and entourage would have first call on the council's spending if it is successful. You need to get that. You need to understand that. The first call on the budget is to pay the mayor, and that's why we need a solid vote against a directly elected mayor, because if we don't, there'll be money coming off services next year to pay for it. Lord Mayor, this is a brilliant budget. Please vote for it.
Thank you, Councillor. We will now move to the vote. The vote of the vote is now passed. That concludes the business of the full council. Thank you, members, for your time and engagement. And I wish you and all those watching a good evening, and hope you all stay safe and well. Thank you.